By 2025, 50% of all professionals will need reskilling or upskilling, according to the World Economic Forum. Are you one of those professionals? In this episode, we'll be thinking very deeply about our career development journey and our growth. You know, over the years, I've had the pleasure of meeting hundreds of thousands of people over my 15-year career. And one thing that always sticks with me is when I meet a person and they somehow have moved up the ladder from role to role. They've climbed it all the way maybe to the C-suite or senior leadership role. And it's kind of like, okay, I've done this, now what? And it's almost like they've just kind of been there for the journey, not really making moves, but just kind of letting the moves make themselves. And a lot of times, people are promoted based on their subject matter expertise. We hear it all the time. Someone's a great subject matter expert. They're maybe promoted to a managerial role or a leadership role, and things just happen from there. But today, I really want to encourage you to really think deeply about where you would like to go in your career. And Kaysan is here to join us on that. It's funny, you know, as learning and development professionals and just people who develop other people, it happens so often where we're thinking about other people first. You know that old saying of putting the mask on yourself first when you're in the airplane and the pressure drops? Well, oftentimes I've found I'm always worried about other people's development, other people's growth, and I sometimes kind of think last about my own development. And that's something I think we have to change just as a profession, as a field. A lot of us, maybe we decided we wanted to become a director. I know me, I got that role. And then I was like, okay, you know, am I satisfied? And so I really want you guys to really tune in, take just a very introspective look at your resume even. And think, am I doing the things that make me happy? Am I playing to my strengths? And there's that funny thing they say, there's that quote out there that when you do what makes you happy and you do something you're passionate about, that's not called stress, right? But in my opinion, I think that any role in any job might have some form of stress. There's good stress and bad stress. Maybe we'll have a couple of well-being experts on the show a little bit later. But one thing I do want to encourage you on is to be sure that you are self-auditing your career. You're taking a stop or a pause to say, am I headed in the direction that I want to head in? So with that, we're going to tune in and join Kaysan Morris to talk about career development. And during this episode, I hope you'll be encouraged to really think deeply about your own career design. And hey, if you need help, just reach out. Kaysan Morris is available to help you. And I've just created a virtual learning community that's there for anyone who develops people, and we're all supporting you and cheerleading you on this journey. So be sure to check out the show notes. All right, let's tune in. Hey, Kaysan. Welcome to the virtual L&D Lounge. I'm so glad that we finally circled back to recording this podcast. Fun fact, y'all, we started recording this podcast in the middle of a tornado watch or warning, whatever the one was, where my husband said literally, hey, you got to stop whatever you're doing and get to the basement. So that's a fun fact. But here we are. And I'm delighted to be joined by Kaysan Morris. Kaysan, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. What's your 30-minute, no, correction.
30 minutes. I don't know if we have 30 minutes to
What is your 30-second elevator pitch? Hopefully you wouldn't be in the elevator for 30 minutes unless you're stuck.
100%. For me, I am a builder of equitable learning cultures. I'm head of learning, 15-year learning and development practitioner. And I just love creating great places for people to work. And in this last iteration of my career, I'm also helping people build agency in relation to how they go forth with developing their career so that they feel capable and ready for this new normal. So it just kind of goes hand in hand, is bringing companies the best talent, people who are confident and have agency in what they want to do and why they want to do it, and then creating the culture for them at work where they can thrive and be their best.
Nice. The interesting thing about what you said is that you do the L&D work. So you do that work, but you also love supporting other people to kind of figure out where they are on that journey. Is that kind of what you're saying?
100%. With everything that's happened with COVID, I realized that people need help. People need support. Like when you think about, if COVID hasn't taught us anything, it's that sometimes our fancy titles or our degrees and the jobs that we're used to having are not that secure. We're working on borrowed time, and the only constant we have right now is change. And the principles that I've utilized myself throughout my career to redesign and pivot and grow over the past 15 years, I realized I had a lot of friends and colleagues, both in the L&D industry and outside of it, asking me like, hey, Kason, like, what do I do next? How do I figure this out? And I realized that I had perspectives and leadership and ideas that could really help people move forward.
Nice, nice. So I want to talk about this whole designing your own career. A lot of us have had more time than we probably would want to think about this whole notion of where we want to go. There's this great resignation, now a reshuffling term is coming about. And then I've also heard from people, people DM me sometimes and they're like, I'm looking for this L&D job and I've been searching for 4 months. And I'm like, well, what about the, 4 million open jobs that are being broadcast? So I'm just curious, what's your whole take on all of this in terms of the design your career part? Because there's a lot of reshuffling, et cetera, but there's still people saying, I'm not landing the job that I want.
Yeah, I think it really boils down to really being sure around what you want and understanding what's happening in the industry space. I mean, as a whole, the market is moving from this idea of pre-COVID, it was like you live to work. And now people are moving to more of a mindset of I work to live. Like there's more to life than just what I'm doing in my 9 to 5. And I think people who are looking for jobs, as I said, with people being furloughed and having positions that may have had title and may have had certain, tenure with certain roles, that they now lose those positions and they think they can hop on to something equivalent, which may have a different makeup of skills, a different makeup of detail that they're not quite aligned for. So what I would say in all is that you really have to think about where you start from where you are right now, but where do you want to go next? And do you really have the skills to perform that job? And on the flip side of it, companies I partner and work with, people operations teams and recruiters and all those folks. And it's crazy. It's very, very busy. So for you to stand out, this is my whole point around this idea of design and taking agency in what you do. You have to come up with new strategies to make sure you stand out and you're heard and that you can get hired for the opportunities you want, because that pedigree you used to have and that fancy title, they don't really matter as much now as it may have 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think that makes me think, because I think at the end of the day, there are people kind of doing different things or wanting to shift, particularly around, people, there's a lot of talk about instructional design just in general. I think folks sometimes confuse the ability to kind of navigate the different roles. It's like, okay, well, I started off as a training coordinator. So what are my options? People don't know how to almost navigate that. It's like, sometimes I talk to people and they're like, well, one example, someone said, I'm a learning and development manager, but I want to be a learning and development director in a company where I am starting my own function. So I'm like, okay, all right, let me keep an eye out for this person. But those roles are so far and few in between. And how do you even read the job description and figure out, is it a nonprofit where they're starting a new function? Those are far and few in between. So how do people navigate through all of that? Because that's a lot to consider, right?
Yeah, I would say it's really about As I said, to the point around knowing what you want to do, there's a hidden market. Some jobs may not have the same title or alignment that you're thinking of. So this is why I suggest people really do research and fact find in different forums like LinkedIn and other forums, and understand, what kind of work is done out there. Like, meaning, if you start to audit your own skills, like say you're a manager and you do an audit of your skills and certain capabilities that you have, and then you say, okay, well, I want to be a director. Whether it's someone learning or outside of that space, just do a bit of a matrix and compare, like, okay, what skills transition over, what skills do I have gaps in, and then start to do some research around roles, like keyword search around those skills, and see what kind of roles pop up. And then what that'll start to do is that'll start to inform your perspective around, like, well, what does this job look like, or why may I potentially be missing? Because your current skill set, your current resume, your current level of expertise, your current network isn't framed to represent that for you. So you say, yeah, I want this job because you feel entitled to it.
Nice.
But are you positioning yourself to really solve the pain points for said company that would give you that title and role to actually execute against?
You're dropping a lot of gems there, Kason. This whole matrix,
Mm-hmm.
auditing your career. I think it's really important because sometimes I look at people's resumes. I used to be a hiring manager, and they were great in ISD, like they were great instructional designer, but then it's like, can you manage a project?
Yep.
And that's a big part of any type of leadership role, where you're, not just the instructional designer, you have to go to manage a project. And I think a lot of people who are now like, there's this big thing about freelancing. Everyone wants to be a freelancer now. Everyone wants to be a side gigger. And having done it a million times, I'm like, I really just don't want to do the work. I don't want to do always the invoicing. And, you're a freelancer too, so you know what it's all about.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that concept too? I know you like helping people to get into different spaces. Are you helping folk who are freelancers, or moving from being maybe full-time what are you kind of focusing on in terms
Yeah.
of right now?
I would say it's agnostic of where you are in your journey. My main goal is to equip you with a toolkit that pays you back forever. So when you want to transition from gig work to full-time work, or full-time work to entrepreneurship, these core principles around career redesign apply regardless. And what I would say around an idea is, I also like to reframe the whole concept of the gig worker and the side hustler is like, you have a portfolio. This is a portfolio of different things that you do. And each opportunity is essentially an experiment to help you decide, well, is this something I want to do all the time? Or is there something different that I can do? And this is how I coach people to also fill their gaps. It's like, if you are the ID and you want to get into more managerial and project management roles, well, then you need to start doing some project management, whether it's in the line of the work you're currently doing, or if it's volunteering and putting together the experiment where you get the experience. Because that is one of the biggest telltales of these things, is people say they want the position and they want the opportunity, but what I would argue is that you want it and you expect someone to give it to you. It's like, no, you go create it.
Nice.
And then you tell the story about what you went through and how you solved pains, or how you had pains and learned different lessons. And that helps build your credibility for those jobs where you're trying to like level up and move forward. So it's less theory and more active practice. You have to take action radically, in my opinion, to really move forward.
It makes me think about, piloting or beta testing, it makes me, because sometimes you don't know what you want until you're in it, kind of like relationships,
100%.
We're both,
100%.
people who are, and so I think just at the end of the day, you don't know until you're dating, and you're like, okay, I think I like this person. Long term, you try it out, maybe try out a couple. And I think for me, if I relay that to the professional world, you don't know what you're good at or what you're going to really like until you get into it.
Yeah.
And I think for me, having come from, just kind of working my own way up, there were things I did not like. Do I want to be learning and development director over a multinational global company with thousands and thousands of employees? Not really. Not really. I'm one of those people that likes a balance of the work.
Yeah.
And I think the higher up you go, the less work you do. So how do people, be okay with failing, be okay with what you're calling experimenting, because they might get into something and be like, this wasn't for me.
Yeah, you make a great point, and I'll just unpack what you said. The thing is that people have this fear of failure, but failure is where often lies our biggest lessons.
Mm,
And what another thing that people don't do is they don't give themselves grace and space to reflect on the experiments that they run. It's like it's okay to try stuff and understand how you feel. We have a very much like a go mentality, and our success is often defined by our ability to win, not so much our ability to learn.
mm.
And these are the things that people, professionals in L&D and beyond, need to reframe. That logic is that, how am I moving intentionally toward what I want to do next? And when you start to think about your intention, as you experiment, you build a backlog of like, oh, this works for me, this doesn't work for me. And it may work for you right now, or it may not work for you right now, but could work for you later. And this is what I really try to get to deconstruct with people, is once they start to get that understanding that they truly have agency in how they approach
Yes.
wherever they are, then at the end of the day, there's no such thing as a bad job. It's like, it's okay for now when you decide what you can do with it to help you get where you want to go next.
Wow. A lot there. Seriously, we could talk for days about this. Um, but it's really taking agency of your career. That's what I got from that last
Yep.
statement, is like not just sitting back, like, oh gosh, I'm gonna work my way up through the ladder and just, I'll retire at 55, which you can't do anymore now anyways, really. Um, so what do you want to leave with folk? Let's drop a few more nuggets, not too much, because I want them to reach out to you. But let's drop what is maybe a nugget or two, a golden gem that you want to leave with people today so that they can really think about.
I would say that if you were thinking about, all right, how do I transition and how do I move forward? There are really four pillars that I look at from an execution standpoint. It's really understanding, your career mindsets, and that's something I coach people around, because there are different mindsets that we have to change or see where we are in order to move forward. You have to look at your skill sets in relation to what you have now, what's durable and perishable, and how those skills align to what you want to do next, and then what strategies you employ to actually learn the skills that you need in order to do what's next. And I work with people on that as well. And then also thinking about your day-to-day workflow and how you work. One of the things that we're all crunched for is time. We all have the same 24. But the difference between those that thrive and those that survive is how they use that time.
Wow.
And what I coach people around is, when you have new skills and new things you want to learn, it's like taking a look at your routines and how you can thread those learning opportunities and those actions into how you're working, whether it's for somebody or the things you're doing outside of work, so that you're practicing, you're having active practice around it. And then the last pillar is think about your brand, how you represent yourself in the market. You want to be a director, you need to represent yourself like a director. And I help people with how to approach that strategically on platforms like LinkedIn and other spaces. So when you take those four pillars into consideration, that's essentially the backbone of the toolkit to help you move forward and start that redesign journey.
Well, you've shared a lot with us today. How do folk reach you if they want to contact you directly, if they want to know more about what you do?
I think the easiest way to reach me is via LinkedIn. I can also be reached via email. It's kason@kasonmorris.com. I do have limited service offerings, and I'm working on some products to bring to market as well, because being an L&D practitioner in the space, I mean, everything's digital, and scaling is the way to go. So I'm making that shift to from producing for other clients to actually launching my own products and services to help people at scale. So I'm really excited to do that in the coming months.
That's very exciting. And I look forward to staying tuned. And you all be sure to go to LinkedIn or follow Kason or reach out to him if you might need any support. Thanks for being able to join us today, Kason. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me, Yolanda. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the L&D Lounge. If you've enjoyed what you've listened to today, please leave us a great review. That'll help others to find us. Also, if you're really enjoying what you're listening to and don't want to miss an episode, hit that subscribe button. And finally, we'd love to connect to you. We have a beautiful learning community full of learning and development professionals and just about anyone who cares about learning. So find the show notes below and join us in our virtual learning and development professional life group. We're not just a learning community, we're a group of people who are living life together and trying to live it to the fullest. All right, y'all, stay healthy and be well.